The Zephyrian research vessel, Gentle Current, drifted silently through the outer rim of the Sol system, its bioluminescent hull barely visible against the star field. Captain Vexhai clutched her communication device with trembling tentacles, her large purple eyes scanning the readouts that confirmed her worst fears. Navigation Officer Tellen, confirm our position, she whispered, though whispers were unnecessary in the vacuum of space. Tellen's antennae twitched nervously as he double-checked the stellar cartography. We are approximately 12 astronomical units from the third planet of this system, Captain. The planet the databases identify as Earth. The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of their organic life support systems. Every crew member knew the stories. Earth was listed in the Galactic database as a restricted zone, marked with warnings in 17 different languages. The dominant species there was classified as Death World apex predators, with a notation that simply read, "Do not engage under any circumstances." But they had no choice. 3 cycles ago, the Zephyrian colony ship Peaceful Tide had been attacked by Kronex raiders near the Helix Nebula. The massive predator species had overwhelmed their defenses in minutes, taking nearly 10,000 Zephyrian civilians as slaves for their fighting pits. The Galactic Council had expressed their regrets and filed the appropriate paperwork, but no military force was willing to challenge the Kronex in their own territory. Captain, Communications Officer Yalura spoke softly, her voice carrying the weight of desperation. The Kronex have moved our people to their fortress world of Kethmoran. Our long-range sensors confirm they are being used in gladiatorial combat. We lose approximately 50 civilians each rotation. Vexhai closed her eyes, feeling the weight of command crushing down on her delicate shoulders. The Zephyrians were a peaceful species, evolved from filter-feeding ocean dwellers. Their technology was advanced in many ways, particularly in bioengineering and sustainable energy, but they had never developed weapons of war. Their entire philosophy was built around harmony and cooperation. "Show me the database entry on Earth again," she commanded. The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a wealth of information that made the crew collectively shudder. Images of humans engaged in various activities scrolled past. Soldiers in combat, athletes pushing their bodies to impossible limits, rescue workers running toward danger instead of away from it. The physical specifications were terrifying to a species that considered a strong breeze dangerous. Average gravitational tolerance, 9.8 meters per second squared, Tellen read aloud. That's nearly 3 times our homeworld's gravity. Average ambient temperature tolerance, 253 to 323 Kelvin. They can survive in temperatures that would freeze our blood or boil our tissues. Yalera added her own horrifying discoveries. Their physiology report indicates they require a toxic atmosphere containing oxygen, one of the most corrosive elements in the known galaxy. Their skeletal structure is made of calcium phosphate, allowing them to impact solid surfaces at high velocity without immediate death. Captain, Chief Science Officer Nifil interjected, his usually calm demeanor cracking. According to these records, humans engage in recreational activities that would kill most galactic species. They voluntarily submit themselves to competitions involving direct physical combat, high-velocity projectiles, and something called extreme sports that appears to be deliberately courting death for entertainment purposes. But it was the military records that truly terrified them. The database contained fragmentary reports from other species who had encountered human military forces. The humans had something called combined arms doctrine and tactical flexibility that had proven devastating against opponents who relied on single-strategy warfare. They could fight in any environment, at any range, with weapons ranging from simple projectile launchers to something ominously labeled as planet crackers. "There's more," Yalera continued, her voice barely above a whisper. The psychological profile indicates they form pack bonds not just with their own species, but with other species they consider allies. However, they also demonstrate something called protective aggression when these bonds are threatened. The report suggests that attacking human allies is considered even more dangerous than attacking humans directly. Vexai stared at the data, feeling her chances of survival dropping with each piece of information. But then she noticed something else in the records. Hidden among the warnings and terror-inducing facts were small notes about human rescue operations. Incidents where human ships had arrived to aid vessels in distress, sometimes at great cost to themselves. Stories of human medics treating wounded aliens, human engineers repairing damaged ships, human diplomats negotiating for the release of captives. Engineering Chief Corbeth, she called. What is our current status? The elderly Zephyrian's response was grim. Captain, our biohull is failing from the damage we sustained escaping the Kronex. We have perhaps 6 rotations of life support remaining. Our quantum drive is completely offline, and our sublight engines are operating at 12% capacity. Vexai looked around at her crew. 23 beings who had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. They had exhausted every other option. The Galactic Council was useless. The other warrior species demanded payments they couldn't afford or had their own conflicts with the Kronex that prevented intervention. Military mercenaries took one look at the fortress world of Kethmoran and doubled their already impossible fees. Captain, Talon said quietly, I've been analyzing the gravitational patterns in this system. If we adjust our orbit, we can use the 4th planet's gravity well to boost our signal strength significantly. We could reach Earth's surface with a focused transmission. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. They could call for help from the most dangerous species in known space. The same species that had reportedly glassed entire worlds when sufficiently provoked. The species that had earned the nickname the Reapers from some of the older civilizations. But their people were dying. What kind of message could we possibly send that wouldn't result in immediate destruction? Nithiel asked. According to these records, humans respond to unknown contact with extreme suspicion. Their first assumption is typically hostile intent. Yilera had been working at her communication station, analyzing human transmission protocols that their deep space monitors had intercepted over the years. Captain, I've been studying their distress signal formats. They have standardized codes for various emergency situations. If we could adapt our message to match their protocols. You want us to pretend to be human? Talon's antennae practically vibrated with anxiety. No, Vexai said slowly, an idea forming in her mind. We tell them the truth, but we tell it in a way they understand. She paused, studying the psychological profiles again. According to this data, humans have a concept called humanitarian intervention. They will sometimes act to prevent atrocities, even when it provides them no direct benefit. She stood up from her captain's perch, her decision made. Ilada, prepara a transmisión. We're going to ask for help. The communications officer's manipulator tentacles worked frantically over her biointerface. Captain, what exactly do I tell them? Vexai considered carefully. The database indicated that humans responded well to direct, honest communication. They valued brevity and clarity in crisis situations. And, according to the psychological profiles, they had an almost pathological need to help those they perceived as innocent victims. Tell them this. This is Captain Vexai of the Zephyrian vessel Gentle Current. We are requesting emergency assistance. 10,000 of our civilians have been taken by hostile forces and are being killed in gladiatorial combat. We have exhausted all other options. We are prepared to offer any form of compensation or assistance in return for aid. Please respond. Captain, Corbeth interrupted. Are we certain about this course of action? The database specifically warns against making contact. Vexai looked at the countdown timer, showing the remaining life of their people on Kethmoran. Chief, our people are dying by the dozens every day. If we do nothing, they all die anyway. If the humans kill us for making contact, at least it will be quick. The transmission array charged with bioelectric energy, the ship's living components responding to the crew's desperate determination. Yilera's voice shook as she announced, Signal ready for transmission, Captain. Send it, Vexai commanded. The message burst forth from their ship at light speed. racing toward the blue-green world that held their only hope. As the transmission completed, the bridge fell into absolute silence. They had just called for help from the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Now, they could only wait and hope that their deaths would at least be quick. Minutes stretched into an hour. Then, too, the crew took turns monitoring their sensors, watching for any sign of response. Some prayed to the deep current, the Zephyrian deity of flowing waters and peaceful tides. Others simply stared at their instruments, afraid to look away in case they missed something important. It was Talon who noticed it first. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple energy signatures moving in our direction from Earth." "How many?" Vexhai asked, her voice steady despite her terror. Talon's antennae went rigid with shock. "Captain, I count 47 distinct signatures. They appear to be military vessels of various classifications." The number hit the bridge like a physical blow. 47 ships. They had expected perhaps one small vessel, maybe a patrol craft sent to investigate and possibly destroy them. This was something else entirely. Signal analysis? Vexheim managed to ask. Yilera worked frantically at her station. "Captain, the electromagnetic signatures they're enormous. These vessels are significantly larger than anything in our database. And Captain," her voice dropped to a whisper, "they're accelerating at rates that should be impossible. They'll be here in less than 6 hours." Chief Science Officer Nithael pulled up comparative analysis on his screen. "Captain, the energy readings suggest these ships are armed with weapons that could reduce our entire homeworld to component atoms. The largest vessel is generating a gravitational signature nearly the size of a small moon." Fear washed over the bridge crew like an ice-cold current. They had wanted help, but this was beyond their wildest nightmares. They had apparently triggered some kind of massive military response. Were the humans coming to destroy them for violating the contact prohibition? Was this how the galaxy's apex predators dealt with perceived threats? "Captain," Yilera said, her voice cracking, "I'm receiving a transmission." Vexhai felt her heart stop. "Put it through." The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human face. The creature was exactly as terrifying as the database had suggested, with forward-facing predator eyes and a mouth filled with cutting teeth. But there was something in the expression that didn't match their expectations. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Fleet," the human said, their voice carrying an odd quality that their translation system struggled with. "We received your distress call, Captain Vexhai. We're en route to your position with Battle Group 7. Can you provide more details about the situation?" The Zephyrian crew stared in stunned silence. The human was asking for more information. They weren't immediately threatening destruction. In fact, the tone almost sounded concerned. Vexhai forced herself to speak. "Admiral Chun, we did not expect such a large response to our request for assistance." The human's expression shifted in a way that might have been amusement. "Captain, when someone calls for help against slavers, we don't send just one ship. Now, tell me everything you know about these Kronex and where they're holding your people." As Vexhai began to explain their situation in detail, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had just set something enormous and irreversible in motion. The humans were coming, and they were bringing an entire battle group. She just hoped they were making the right choice. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the command center of a UES Leviathan, watching her tactical display populate with data from the Zephyrian vessel. Around her, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements sharp and purposeful. The massive dreadnought hummed with barely contained power as it led Battle Group 7 through hyperspace toward an uncertain confrontation. "Admiral," Commander Jackson reported from the intelligence station, "we've completed our analysis of Captain Vexhai's data package. The situation is worse than initially reported." Sarah nodded grimly. "The past 4 hours have been a whirlwind of activity as Earth's military machine shifted into high gear. The moment the Zephyrian distress call reached Terra Station, emergency protocols had activated. Within 30 minutes, Battle Group 7 had been mobilized and launched. Within 2 hours, They had been joined by elements from Battle Groups 3 and 12. "Brief me, Commander." Jackson's expression was grim as he pulled up holographic displays. The Kronex Imperium is a military hierarchy based on conquest and predation. They've been expanding aggressively for the past 50 years, enslaving or eliminating any species they encounter. Their technology is robust, but unimaginative, focusing on overwhelming firepower and heavy armor. Numbers. Best estimate based on Zephyrian intelligence and our own deep space monitoring. Approximately 40,000 ships of various classes, controlling 16 star systems. Their fortress world of Kethmoran is heavily defended with orbital weapons platforms and a standing fleet of over 300 vessels. Sarah studied the tactical projection, her mind automatically calculating vectors, engagement ranges, and supply lines. What about their captives? 10,000 Zephyrian civilians being held in gladiatorial arenas across the planet's surface. Intelligence suggests they're being used in blood sports for entertainment, with approximately 50 deaths per day. At current rates, the entire population will be dead within 6 months. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Sarah felt the familiar cold anger that had driven her through 3 decades of military service. She had joined the fleet to protect Earth from external threats, but somewhere along the way, protecting innocents had become her primary mission. "Admiral," communications officer Torres interrupted, "we're receiving updates from Fleet Command. Admiral Rodriguez is personally overseeing the mission parameters." The main screen flickered to life, showing the weathered face of Fleet Admiral Elena Rodriguez. Behind her, Sarah could see the controlled chaos of Terra Station's command center, with dozens of officers coordinating what was clearly becoming a major operation. "Admiral Chun," Rodriguez began without preamble, "I've authorized rules of Engagement Package 7. You have full discretionary authority to use whatever force necessary to secure the release of those civilians." Sarah felt a moment of surprise. Package 7 was reserved for extreme circumstances, essentially giving her carte blanche to wage unrestricted warfare. "Acknowledged, Admiral. What's our political position with the Galactic Council?" Rodriguez's expression turned sardonic. "The Council has officially declared this an internal matter between sovereign species and requested that all parties pursue diplomatic solutions. Unofficially, 3 different council members have back-channel contacted us requesting that we accidentally take care of the Kronex problem permanently. And unofficially, Chin, half the galaxy is terrified of the Kronex, but too weak to do anything about them. The other half is secretly hoping we'll remove a threat they can't handle themselves. You have implicit support from species representing 60% of known space, as long as we maintain plausible deniability." Sarah nodded. It was the political situation she had expected. Humanity's reputation as a military power had grown significantly since first contact, but it came with both benefits and complications. Other species were increasingly viewing Earth as the galaxy's unofficial police force. What about intelligence on Kronex military capabilities? "That's where things get interesting," Rodriguez continued. "We've been monitoring their expansion for years through long-range reconnaissance. Their tactics are predictable, their technology is adequate, and their command structure is rigid. They rely on intimidation and overwhelming numbers rather than tactical flexibility." Commander Jackson added, "Admiral, based on our analysis, the Kronex have never faced an opponent with comparable technology and superior tactical doctrine. Their entire strategic philosophy assumes they'll be fighting species similar to their previous victims." Sarah considered the implications. The Kronex had built their empire by conquering peaceful species like the Zephyrians. They were used to fighting opponents who either couldn't fight back effectively or were too frightened to mount serious resistance. They had probably never faced an enemy that actually wanted to fight. "Time to destination? 17 hours at current speed," her navigation officer reported. Sarah activated her command interface, pulling up fleet disposition data. Battle Group 7 consisted of 1 heavy dreadnought, 3 battlecruisers, 8 cruisers, 12 destroyers, and supporting auxiliaries. Added to elements from the other battle groups, she had nearly 70 ships under her command, representing the largest human military force ever assembled for external operations. All ships, this is Admiral Chun, she announced over the fleet communication system. In approximately 17 hours, we will arrive at the Keth Moran system to conduct a rescue operation for 10,000 civilian captives. The enemy outnumbers us approximately 4-1, but they lack our tactical flexibility and technological advantages. This is a volunteer mission, authorized at the highest levels of fleet command. She paused, looking around her bridge at the faces of men and women who had volunteered to risk everything for people they had never met, from a species they barely knew existed. I want to be clear about what we're facing. The Kronex Imperium is a military dictatorship built on slavery and conquest. They have been expanding unchecked for decades, destroying entire civilizations. They view other species as either slaves or entertainment. They have taken 10,000 innocent civilians and are forcing them to fight to the death for amusement. Her voice hardened. This ends today. We're going to hit them hard, hit them fast, and we're going to bring those people home. Questions? Captain Martinez of the battlecruiser Damascus spoke up. Admiral, what are our rules of engagement regarding Kronex military personnel? Standard military targets are fair game, Captain. We're not here to commit genocide, but we are here to end their ability to threaten innocent species. Use your judgment, but remember that every minute we spend fighting is another minute those civilians remain in danger. Commander Hassan from the destroyer squadron added, Admiral, what's our extraction plan for the captives? Sarah smiled grimly. We're bringing the entire 4th Marine Division, plus specialized rescue teams from the 77th Special Operations Group. Once we establish orbital superiority, we extract every single civilian we can find. As the fleet continued its hyperspace jump toward Keth Moran, Sarah found herself thinking about the Zephyrian captain who had made the desperate decision to contact Earth. According to the cultural files, the Zephyrians were a peaceful species who had never developed military technology beyond basic defense systems. They were filter feeders who had evolved in shallow seas, building a civilization based on cooperation and harmony. They were everything humans weren't, and yet they had reached out in desperation to the galaxy's apex predators for help. Admiral, Torres called from communications. We're receiving regular updates from the Zephyrian vessel. Captain Vexhai is requesting permission to accompany the fleet to Keth Moran. Sarah considered the request. The Zephyrian ship was barely functional, held together with bioorganic repair systems and desperate hope. Taking them into combat would be tantamount to murder. But she also understood the captain's desire to be present when her people were rescued. Tell Captain Vexhai that she and her crew are welcome to accompany us, but they will remain at a safe distance during combat operations. Also, patch me through to Chief Medical Officer Kim. I want to make sure we're prepared to treat Zephyrian physiology. As her crew worked to implement her orders, Sarah returned her attention to the tactical analysis. The Kronex fortress world was heavily defended, but their defensive strategy was designed to repel boarding actions and planetary assaults, not to deal with advanced space-based weaponry. They had positioned their orbital platforms in standard defensive grids, following doctrine that was probably centuries out of date. Commander Jackson, what's our assessment of Kronex response time? Based on their fleet movements over the past several years, they typically require 6 to 8 hours to mobilize significant forces. Their command structure appears to require multiple levels of authorization for major military actions. Sarah nodded. The Kronex might outnumber them, but they would have all the advantages of surprise, superior technology, and tactical flexibility. More importantly, they will be fighting for something more than conquest or glory. They will be fighting to save innocent lives. 12 hours before arrival, the fleet began final preparations. Weapons systems were checked and rechecked. Marine assault teams reviewed intelligence on the gladiatorial facilities where the Zephyrian civilians were being held. Medical teams prepared for the treatment of trauma victims from a species they had only theoretical knowledge about. Throughout the fleet, men and women who had volunteered for what could easily be a suicide mission went about their duties with calm professionalism. They understood the stakes. They understood the risks. And they understood that sometimes protecting the innocent required risking everything. Admiral, Communications Officer Torres announced, Fleet Command is requesting regular updates on mission status. They're also forwarding intelligence updates from deep space reconnaissance assets. What kind of updates? Torres frowned at her display. Admiral, it appears that word of our mission has leaked to the broader galactic community. We're detecting increased communications traffic across multiple star systems, and several species have moved military assets to positions where they can monitor the outcome. Sarah wasn't surprised. Humanity's first major military intervention in galactic affairs will be closely watched by every species in known space. Some would be hoping for their success, others for their failure. I'll be taking notes. Keep monitoring Torres, and maintain communication with Captain Vex High. I want to make sure she knows exactly what she's getting her people into. As the Leviathan-led battle group 7 through the final hours of hyperspace transit, Sarah Chun stood in her ready room, looking out at the stars streaming past. In a few hours, Earth's military would either prove itself as the galaxy's protector or suffer a devastating defeat that would encourage every predator species in known space. But as she thought about 10,000 innocent civilians being forced to fight and die for entertainment, she felt the familiar certainty that had guided her entire career. Some things were worth fighting for, regardless of the cost. The Zephyrians had asked for help, and humanity had answered. Now, they would discover what happened when the galaxy's apex predators decided to go to war for justice instead of conquest. The Kethmoran system erupted into chaos as Battle Group 7 dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Admiral Chun watched her tactical display update in real time as 70 human warships materialized simultaneously at optimal engagement range, their arrival timed with mathematical precision. All ships report ready status, Commander Torres announced. Fleet Formation Alpha 7 established. We have tactical superiority. Sarah studied the enemy dispositions through her command interface. The Kronex had been caught completely off guard. Their defensive fleet was scattered across the system in patrol formations, with the majority of ships docked at orbital stations for maintenance. It would take them hours to organize an effective response. Admiral, Commander Jackson reported, his voice tight with controlled excitement. Enemy fleet composition confirmed. 237 vessels of various classifications, but only 48 are currently powered and ready for combat. The Kronex fortress world hung before them like a scarred brown jewel, its surface dotted with the lights of massive arena complexes. Long-range sensors detected the energy signatures of thousands of life forms concentrated in specific locations across the planet's surface. Captain Vex High, Sarah called to the Zephyrian vessel hanging back at a safe distance. Can you confirm the locations where your people are being held? The alien captain's response carried a mixture of hope and terror. Admiral Chun, our deep-range biosensors detect Zephyrian life signs in 7 major complexes across the southern continent. The signals are weak. Many of our people are injured or dying. Sarah felt her jaw clench. Every moment they spent in tactical positioning was another moment those civilians remained in danger. All ships, this is Admiral Chun. We are implementing Plan Delta. Strike Groups Alpha and Beta will establish orbital superiority. Strike Group Gamma will suppress planetary defense systems. Marine assault teams will deploy the moment we have secured the drop zones. The human fleet moved with deadly precision. The battlecruisers Damascus, Berlin, and Tokyo accelerated toward the scattered Kronex patrol ships, their advanced targeting systems locking onto enemy vessels before the aliens even realized they were under attack. First contact in 30 seconds, reported Captain Martinez from the Damascus. Enemy vessels are attempting to power weapons systems, but they're not going to make it in time. The opening engagement was devastatingly brief. Human railgun projectiles struck Kronex vessels at relativistic speeds, their kinetic energy reducing heavily armored warships to expanding clouds of plasma and debris. In less than 3 minutes, the Outer System Patrol Fleet had been completely eliminated. Admiral, Commander Hassan reported from the destroyer squadron, "We have incoming enemy reinforcements from the orbital stations. Count is 67 vessels, mixed cruisers and destroyers." Sarah nodded. The Kronex were responding exactly as predicted, sending out their ready reserves in a desperate attempt to drive off what they probably assumed was a small raid force. They had no idea what they were actually facing. Strike Group Beta. Engage enemy reinforcements at maximum range. Strike Group Gamma. Begin bombardment of planetary defense installations. The space around Kethmoran lit up with weapon fire as the human fleet engaged the Kronex defenders. But this wasn't the kind of chaotic battle that the Kronex were used to fighting. Every human ship moved with purpose, targeting specific enemy vessels while maintaining perfect formation integrity. The Kronex fought bravely, but uselessly. Their weapons were designed for close-range brawling, while human tactical doctrine emphasized long-range precision strikes. Their ships were heavily armored, but slow, while human vessels combined advanced shielding with superior maneuverability. Most critically, their command structure was rigid and hierarchical, while human commanders were trained to adapt and improvise. Enemy flagship destroyed, reported Captain Singh from the battlecruiser Mumbai. Remaining vessels are attempting to withdraw to planetary orbit. "Don't let them reach the surface," Sarah ordered. Those installations could be holding civilians hostage. The battle raged across the system for 2 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human technology, training, and tactical flexibility proved overwhelmingly superior to Kronex brute force tactics. By the time the planetary defense platforms had been silenced, the space around Kethmoran was littered with the wreckage of 237 enemy warships. Admiral, Torres announced, "We're receiving surrender transmissions from the planetary government. They're offering to negotiate the return of the captives in exchange for our withdrawal." Sarah's expression turned glacial. "Tell them they have exactly one option: immediate and unconditional surrender of all Zephyrian captives. Any attempt to harm the prisoners will result in the complete destruction of their civilization." "Admiral," Commander Jackson interrupted, "long-range sensors are detecting additional enemy fleets en route from 3 neighboring systems. Estimated arrival time is 18 hours. This was the moment Sarah had been preparing for. The Kronex weren't just going to accept the destruction of their fortress world without response. They were mobilizing everything they had for a counterattack. "Captain Martinez, you have command of orbital security. Begin marine deployment immediately. Captain Hassan, take destroyer squadrons 7 and 9 and establish a perimeter patrol. I want to know the moment those enemy fleets enter sensor range." The marine assault was a masterpiece of precision warfare. 4,000 Earth Marines deployed to the planet's surface in heavily armored dropships, their assault vectors calculated to minimize civilian casualties while maximizing tactical advantage. The 77th Special Operations Group led targeted strikes on the gladiatorial complexes, using non-lethal weapons to subdue guards, while specialized medical teams began treating the rescued Zephyrians. "Admiral," came the voice of Colonel Rodriguez from the surface, "we've secured the first complex. Casualties among the captives are heavy, but we're extracting approximately 1,500 survivors. Medical teams report severe malnutrition and untreated injuries, but most will survive with proper treatment." Over the next 6 hours, the rescue operation proceeded with ruthless efficiency. Marine teams secured all 7 major complexes, while special operations units conducted searches for additional prisoners. The Kronex ground forces, designed for suppressing civilian populations, proved utterly incapable of resisting a professional military assault. "Final count, Admiral," Colonel Rodriguez reported as the last transport lifted off from the planet's surface. 9,733 Zephyrian civilians recovered. We lost 84 individuals who were too severely injured to save, and approximately 200 who had already been killed before our arrival. Sarah felt a mixture of satisfaction and regret. They had saved nearly 10,000 innocent lives, but they had been too late for some. The cost of the Galactic Council's inaction was measured in civilian deaths that could have been prevented. Admiral, Captain Vexai's voice came through the communications system, thick with emotion that the translation system struggled to convey. We have no words. You have saved our people. The debt we owe cannot ever be repaid. Captain, the only payment we want is for your people to be safe, Sarah replied. But I need to warn you, this isn't over. The Kronex are bringing reinforcements. We're about to face their main battle fleet. As if summoned by her words, Commander Jackson announced, Admiral, enemy fleets are dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Initial count is 847 vessels. They appear to be the combined forces of 3 different Kronex battle fleets. The main view screen shifted to show the tactical display, now populated with hundreds of enemy contacts arranged in massive attack formations. This was the real Kronex military, not the garrison forces they had just defeated. This was an armada capable of reducing entire planets to ash. All rescued civilians have been transferred to our hospital ships, Torres reported. Captain Vexai is requesting permission to evacuate the system with her people. Granted, Sarah replied immediately. Captain, get your people to safety. We'll hold the line here. Admiral, Vexai's voice was barely above a whisper. There are too many of them. You should withdraw while you can. Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Men and women who had volunteered to face impossible odds to save people they had never met. Behind them, 9,000 Zephyrian civilians were being evacuated to safety aboard human hospital ships. Captain, we appreciate your concern, but we have a job to finish. The Kronex brought this fight to us the moment they decided to enslave innocent people. Today, that ends. The Kronex armada advanced in massive formations, their ships arranged in traditional attack waves designed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer weight of numbers. It was an impressive sight, and against any other opponent in the galaxy, it would have been devastatingly effective. But they weren't facing any other opponent. All ships, this is Admiral Chun, Sarah announced over the fleet communication system. We are now facing the main Kronex battle fleet. They outnumber us 12-1, but they're using tactics that are 3 centuries out of date. We have technological superiority, tactical flexibility, and something they don't understand. We're not fighting for conquest. We're fighting for justice. She paused, watching as her tactical display showed the human fleet moving into attack formation with perfect precision. Today, we send a message that will be heard across the galaxy. Any species that preys on the innocent, any military that enslaves civilians, any empire that treats other beings as entertainment will face the consequences. This is Admiral Sarah Chun, commanding Battle Group 7. All ships engage at will. The Battle of Keth Moran became legendary in galactic military history. For 8 hours, 70 human warships faced down an armada of over 800 enemy vessels in a running battle across an entire star system. The Kronex threw everything they had at the human fleet. Mass bombardments, suicide attacks, attempts to overwhelm individual ships through coordinated assault. None of it worked. Human tactical doctrine, developed through centuries of warfare against equally advanced opponents, proved devastatingly effective against an enemy that relied on overwhelming numbers and predictable tactics. Human ships moved in perfect coordination, concentrating firepower where it would be most effective while avoiding enemy strongpoints. Advanced shielding and armor systems allowed them to survive attacks that should have been fatal, while their own weapons tore through enemy formations like knives through paper. But it was human adaptability that truly won the day. When the Kronex tried to surround individual ships, human commanders implemented tactics they had never used before, improvising new formations and attack patterns in real time. When enemy forces attempted mass suicide attacks, human point defense systems engaged with precision that bordered on the impossible. By the end of the battle, the space around Keth-Moran was a graveyard of Kronik's warships. Of the 847 vessels that had entered the system, fewer than 50 survived to escape into hyperspace. The mighty Kronik's Imperium, terror of the galaxy for half a century, had been broken in a single day by a human fleet that had started the battle outnumbered 12-1. Final casualty report, Admiral. Commander Jackson announced. We lost the destroyers Portland and Phoenix with heavy damage to the cruiser Denver. Total casualties, 437 killed, 812 wounded. Enemy casualties are complete. Sarah nodded grimly. They had won, but the cost had been real. 437 human beings had died to save 9,000 Z.